I'm in the right place.
You are. You are.
Stocking hat counselor. Hello. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Is it that cold out?
What's that?
Is it that cold out?
Well, I thought it was. Let's put it that way. When I put on my hat, I just haven't taken it off until now.
No, because I haven't been out since 8:30 this morning, so I don't know.
I haven't been out either.
Well, it's getting colder.
We are
horrible
people.
Winter, is it?
Hey, wait, one.
One, two. I want everything, man.
Yeah, it seemed to be short of spreadsheets. Oh, here, yeah. Oh, don't say it. I don't know why. Did I give anybody an extra spreadsheet?
You can borrow mine. Wayne? You can borrow mine.
Can you tell us what you'll tell us what the word is at the top?
Yeah, did it cut off?
Yeah.
Well, we got a little competition here. Oh, all right, red light. 1, 2, 3, red light. Wayne's here. You can always tell the red light's on. All right, good evening, folks. I'm doing tonight's opening ceremony while standing. Welcome to the January 7th, 2020 regular meeting of the Town of Easton Planning and Zoning Board. And we are being recorded and or going out live via ECAT tonight. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for coming in, guys, for an additional meeting. Appreciate it. So first off, I want to welcome, I'm pretty sure we all either know or at least familiar with as we know, Stephanie has left, and Andrea Langhauser is our interim planning director. Been in Easton, what, 3 years? 4 years? It's been a while.
Almost 3.
So, welcome. Pleasure always to work with Andrea, and certainly look forward to working diligently over the next few months. So, thanks for coming aboard and helping out. So, we are here tonight to discuss Five Corners zoning and village business district, but I think like the emphasis might be on Five Corners. And I know, there was a meeting that with Connor and Andrea, Stephanie, and myself had. I'm trying to think if it was after our last meeting. I'm not sure.
Yes. Yes.
So the reason we decided to do this meeting was just with Stephanie leaving, knowing that we want to get the zoning on the boards for town meeting this year. I know how that clock gets ticking quickly. And we hadn't really progressed as things hadn't progressed as quick as we had hoped for. So I thought, okay, why don't we just do a planning session here, a work session to really just try to figure out how we're going to achieve the goals in the Five Corners district, and then hopefully have that translated in code and zoning by our consultants, and by our team in-house here, and by ourselves. So what I wanted to do to start, in a second, I went in and I with the benefit of, with the help of Google Earth, I took pictures of every property, screenshots of every property in the district. So there's a really long, literally cut and pasted map I gave you. It's just, the numbers on here correspond with a photo. You'll see it'll be a picture number. So when we look at this, there'll be a picture number, there'll be a picture of the property, the address, and just the size of it. And, I thought we've had some site meetings out there, which some of us went to, some didn't. And we've had some new members since then, and I thought, and it's one of those things we all drive by here, I'm sure, plenty of times, but we're focusing on the road. So I thought if we would go through, just real quick, take a look at them so we kind of get it all in our minds. And then so the spreadsheet I gave you is, sort of for notes. I kind of wrote down what the current use is and just put some comments, some thoughts that I had. As we know, the purpose of this Five Corner district is to take advantage of the sewer that is now started to be installed, and to facilitate economic growth. Oh, good evening, happy New Year to you. Thanks for joining us. In mixed use and so I got to the point where okay, so we work with Judy and her team, and they give us some info, and then we work with Stephanie and her team, and now Andrea and her team, and then ourselves. And I thought, what, we sometimes get a little bit disjointed, and maybe we should just boil it down. We've done yeoman's work in the past, and maybe we just take a look at it and say, okay, how, because there's some parcels in here that really don't make sense that you can do anything with right now. Maybe they'll be consolidated someday, or maybe not. I just thought if we went through really quick on a parcel by parcel basis, and so it's, you know, it's part brainstorming, part throwing it against the wall, and then with, you know, we have enough folks here too, so it's no holds barred, and everybody feel free to, let's figure this thing out so that we can hopefully come to a consensus on how and where we want to see this district used. So as I told you, so the first thing I gave out was the you know, the map that corresponds with the pictures. This is just sort of a cheat sheet to write along. And then this, kind of less important, but I did it. We had this map that I gave. I have I'll bring it over when I get there. This was the zoning map that Stephanie had started with. And I think she had taken and there was an awful lot of colors on here for lots of reasons, and different pochets. And so I went in, and I know originally Stephanie based this on just the sewer district, the outline of the sewer district. And I thought, okay, well, why don't we eliminate all the open space and conservation areas and ponds? Obviously, we're not going to be developing those. And I pulled out a couple of the condominium developments. We can talk about that later. But so what's in the red is what I'm thinking is might make sense as the proposed district, not in stone. This is just, again, just a starting point. And just the hatched pattern is just, you know, kind of taking it out of there. Because I thought, why don't we, you know, Andrew and I were talking the other day, and we like things to be pithy and concise. You know, zoning, you always want to limit your number of pages. And so why create a district with half the parcels are never going to be developed? Why don't we just pull them out so we don't have any ambiguity? And unless I'm wrong on that. And feel free at any time to tell me to be quiet. So I'm going to mosey over to the laptop for a second here. Bear with me. Bring these for Judy.
So it's removal is the word. Yeah.
Literally cut and paste, so please forgive me. No, you're good. You're good. I'll slide this over here. This is the picture numbers as we go along.
Yeah.
All right. So, boom. No, you're good. You're good. I just didn't want to. So much for courses. Hello, young man. All right. So I'm assuming I can just arrow up and down on this, right? All right. Let's see. All right. Here we go. So I started on Foundry Street, heading west. So as you can see how this works, it just lists the picture, gives the address, and gives the parcel number. So this is if you're familiar with where the U-Haul store is, this is the building, this is the house to the right of it. So, you know, I'll give my crudeness here. All right. So this is basically two doors down from Shaw's. It's to the right of Shaw's, and to the right of this is the duplex that was built maybe 2 years ago. No, I don't really have any comment at the time. Just 1 acre, and you know we can circle back after. All right, step down that way. There's property next door. It's the U-Haul, 1.4 acres, existing mixed use. It abuts Shaw's, and it abuts the Gill property to the rear.
That's where the antenna is?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Right. I'm sorry, is number one, what's the use there? Is this all mixed use along the way, you know?
No, well, it's single family. Number one, single family.
Yeah, but what's it zoned right now?
Just as a reminder, we'll have to use the microphone if others need to speak, right?
Might
So that
not work.
others, for the.
I'm sorry, it's probably not relevant,
Well, there is a zoning map here that shows, yeah, it's kind of not relevant right now how it's zoned.
Okay, all right,
So
okay.
because what do we want to zone it as is kind of
Okay,
where we're
all
going,
right,
so.
thank you.
Wayne, will you pick up one of those microphones and bring it over to you too?
There you go. So, across the street, 1.5 acres. So now I'm going to circle back. So if you remember right here, 466 Foundry, we approved this for duplex last year. And then to the left of it, I'll circle back, 464. Now these are the 2 lots if you've been up there recently. In fact, I think this building may have been demolished. These are the 2 lots that were clear cut recently. Have the same owner, believe they're on the market. Mr. Heichel's been in here a couple times, met with Stephanie and I. kicking around different maybe mixed use ideas.
So you own
So-
3 and 4?
Is it? Yeah, no, 4 and 5.
Yeah, it is.
Pictures 4 and 5.
Yeah.
Picture 3 is just a standalone. So here's an example. So together they're 1.8 acres. So there's a blank slate for us to. As we go through the district, there's some parcels that are ripe for redevelopment or use, and some that probably never will see, or won't make much sense. So, but there's certainly one that is ripe. Shaw's Plaza, 19.83 acres, and plenty of room for pad sites, or especially when we come around the corner, when we look at it from the Depot Street end. There's sites right at the entrance. Bank, 1.4 acres, probably stays as a bank for now. Burger King. These are 85 to 90 Foundry Street, kind of landlocked residential condos, 5 units. So here's another candidate for consolidation. It's a single family, I'll jump it abuts that lot right on the corner, which used to have, I think it was the Bay Banks on it. There was talk of putting a charging station there at one point. There was talk of having a food truck patio set up, but I think we can do better than that.
You're talking about consolidated 482 and 390?
Well, I bet you someone's thought about that, right? Probably, again, given, but
Prime
so
location.
yeah, it gives us. But you're looking at so it gives us 7.7 acres. So later on we start thinking about minimum lot size. That's one of the reasons I put these lot sizes out there. Across the street, one of the many gas stations in Five Corners. All 3 of them, we've got those covered. So right to the right of this, 494, town records didn't show the acreage, but there's 2 separate lots, and then behind these, if you look at the map, there's 2 parcels on Bay Road where I have the number 53 written, and there appears to be pretty good possibility in there for some consolidation. I think there appears to be, if any, minimal sort of a wetlands impact. Of course, we don't really know that, but just on the surface. And I remember the last few years I've been in a couple times trying to kick around some ideas, but again, our zoning wasn't really amenable for anything at the time. So there's another possibility. 501 Foundry Street, the old Walgreens, 1.83 acres. What's intriguing to me about this site is, first of all, they've started to come down on their sale price, which is good. Maybe because they've relocated over to Shaw's Plaza. But this has that access road where Deb and I were almost killed one day. Comes off of Bay Road. But there's another single lot over there that there's some people have some interesting ideas on. So, 1.8 acres. So there's and it's high and dry. Across the street, this is Mr. McLaughlin's plaza. And there's a big chunk of land behind here. I couldn't tell from any of the records. I didn't have time to look at the old site plan, but I'm wondering, I don't know if there's anything back there that can be used. You have to wonder if it hasn't been developed. This is the old 1882 house. Do you think maybe they would have done something with it? But again, if you look at how that ties into the back of those lots where I showed number 53, there's certainly, potential to do something substantial there. Wrong way. McGuire's, 1.12 acres. If you look on the map behind this, an idea we've kicked around for a few years, but we think maybe a little more investigation, or obviously a little more investigation needs to be done. But that same access road that comes from or through the backside off of Bay Road into Walgreens, why couldn't that be continued behind this building and this parcel on the right? Again, there's certainly, if you look at this, it's the same intermittent stream that eventually came out of Weber Estates, but it looks like possibly that entire parcel might not be off the books. So again, there may be a little consolidation. It may be possible to do something. And we've talked a few times about having an access road back there.
Parking.
You know, there's the old bank, which is vacant. Always hearing rumors of a restaurant going in there, but nothing yet. I put this up. So this is Clay Gables, and this is a separate lot. And I put this there. Ed Walsh, as you know from Korea's Plaza, has mentioned to us. He owns the not the condos, but the Clay Gables is on a separate lot, the 1.4 acres. And what we see in front of us, that green space, is the septic system, which obviously will be coming offline once they connect to sewer. And so he's stopped in and wondering if there's something he said, hey, what can we put something there? So again, not going to work with a 40,000 square foot lot, but another reason to maybe look at lot size. And that's there just for view. That's a detention basin and a stream, so nothing's going to happen there. There's subway, which is set back. 22. So this is across the street. This is next door. This is to the left of, well, it used to be the Foundry. Now it's La Cucina?
Familiar.
La Familia, right. Half an acre. There's the restaurant, 2.3 acres, and question after, and I'm like, what's back there? We looked at that site plan. I don't remember there being wetlands on there, man. It's one of those old potato lots in Easton. You know, I wonder, could that be combined? If you look at the back, look at this property. 2.66 acres. Goes all the way back to the South Street Cemetery. So jumping back, so this property here, 523, is a mixed use existing dentist office. This came to us a few years ago. The owner at the time was looking to perhaps put in some type of mixed use. At the time, it was a really large building, 40 units, and it was a little too big for the site. But there's an appetite to create some mixed use there. Not a very deep lot, but it has some width, so another possibility. Small residential lot, that one we talked about. Now we start to hit the remnants of the historic district. A little further up, here's 1.1 acres, 531, right across the street. Nice little balloon frame. To the right of that, on half an acre. Anybody can tell me what that building on the right was originally? Dan?
Site, what was it?
Wasn't that a post office? Way back.
No, not very
I think someone told me it was a post office.
It's
It's
Frank.
original. Then it was a farm stand.
Yeah, it's Frank Menino's.
Right. But wasn't it a temporary post office for a year and a half?
There was a little post office there, but it's not there.
No, there was a
A little further up there was,
Oh,
right, at
Peconic,
Peconic, but
yeah.
anyway. 1.3 acres here, if we get to a smaller lot size. South Street access, South Street address, probably stays on South Street, especially knowing that eventually this road will be widened. 541 Foundry Street, beautiful historic road. Looks up South Street. There's a nice parcel. South Street's a beautiful street, although unfortunately Google Earth has not ventured up that way, so nor can I. But if you look on the map, a little further up, shows on the bend what I've proposed in the district. There's a large parcel, which, boy, screams compact neighborhood.
Oh.
Historically created a compact neighborhood. I ain't going that way. Across the street, that's on the other corner of South Street. This is next to the Foundry. Right, so you can see these are all basically 3/4 of an acre north or south. So I took this picture purposefully. So you see, here's the house, the old historic house, although not much historic has survived, but still has that beautiful fence. That's on the corner of Peconic. Going to the right of it, you can see the large yard. Then there's the house next door. So there's a thought: if we were to go to a smaller lot size, would we like to see that filled in, or do we want to see that stay open? We've talked about how this district varies. It's sort of it's like New Orleans. It's a checkerboard neighborhood, right? A little smaller, but there's a slice of commercial, and industrial, and there's residential, and there's open space commercial.
You need to find where you want open spaces, parks, and things like that on that area, and that make it a nice place to go for the people to walk and come with kids and all that.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is private property, so I don't think this is gonna become a park, but it's more about, do we wanna preserve, just in this, I know your point's well taken, but in this case, do we, you know, do we wanna keep it like that, or do we wanna?
Is that part of development, say that private property should really be something?
Well, I don't know how you create a park on private property, but you're like, so there's looking up Aquanticut, and, you know, they had further going up Aquanticut and South Street as part of the district, but I thought, you know, given how nicely preserved that historic neighborhood is, I don't think we have the appetite for economic development up there in terms of mixed use. Maybe that's just me. There's your park. There's the park in Easton that nobody knows about. Right across. So there's, to the left is the Foundry site. We all know what's happening there. Across the street, the used car. To the left of that, another half acre. To the left of that, an 1.5 acre house, which abuts the pond. These are across the street. So behind this is the sawmill portion of the Foundry site. 3 houses, 1 older, 2 modern houses, all on about 3/4 of an acre. Church up at the end, across from Keystone Masonry House right there. The entrance to Robert Drive. So I showed this picture just for a second, looking up Robert Drive a little bit. Obviously on the left is the bank. After that, the 19 Eastman Street. That's, if you look further up on the map where I show a picture of 48, there's those 2 parcels which have frontage both on Robert Drive and on Eastman Street. And we've had an individual party who owns both of those looking perhaps to do some housing up there. So there's another area to discuss and determine how we'd like to do it. There's Northeastern Savings across the street. A little further up Eastman Street, a couple of commercial properties. Those are where number 50 is. There's the building on 11.8 acres that we had hoped to get an easement from someday to access the back of Clover Valley Farm. And then the last building in the district, that's I-45 Eastman Street. Head back to 5 Corners, heading south on Bay Road. We're almost done with this, folks. So this is behind the, look at the plan, this is where the 53 is. This is behind that gas station that also, that abuts the, the strip mall with the golf, I'm trying to get the name of it. But,
golf.
so those 2 parcels that, you know, tie in into the back of McLaughlin's parcel, like, there's seems to be potential for some consolidation there. There's a little bit of wetlands on the left, but nothing that would prohibit some substantial. So heading further up across the street, I couldn't tell if this looks like this must be 2 single families. But that's why I put 1 or 2 family, not sure. Another single family next door, across the street from those. These are 2 separate lots. I was just getting tired of taking pictures, so I consolidated those. And 1 more house, and then the fire station, which I don't know why we would include that in the district, but we've gone that far, so I did. And then further back, this was these 2 lots are actually part of Greenwood Village, the condos which access out onto to Bay Road a little further up. All right, heading north on Depot Street. Here we are in front of Shaw's. There's the Dunkin' Donuts. There's a CVS at 689. So here's the other entrance to Shaw's. And there's a good PAZ site right there. The urgent care, which we approved a few years back, across the street, Northeastern Savings. Clearly a progress picture. I wonder what it'll look like when it's done. Were those your sidewalks, Peter, or those Wayne's?
Those are ways.
Were those Wayne's? Wayne, if you're watching, you should be proud. And 670 Depot Street. I always thought a good candidate to add some mixed use. Then last one, heading down Bay Road. So you can see to the left, there's the entrance to the mobile station. Here's the second entrance to the mobile station off of Bay Road. And then here's that house that's sort of on an island. To the right is that access road which goes up behind to Walgreens. Interested party who owns this would love to. He's come in a few times the last couple of years. Love to do a mixed use. First proposal a couple of years ago, he had 18 units, a very modern looking building on top of a restaurant. It's probably a little aggressive for the acre site. But has since, so he's said to us, you know, let me know what I can put there. You know, he's on board. He'd like to do some creative mixed use there. So there's another, you know, possible site. That's why I'm really, I'm intrigued with that access road back there, because it'd be great if we could get that behind McGuire's, because that road opens up a lot. And then that would be nice, you know, that congestion's never going away to avoid some of that. Why you traverse between the properties wouldn't be bad. Right to the right of that is where you start the strictly single family section of Bay Road. So it seemed to be where we would stop the district, and that's looking up to the right. All right. Thank you for putting up with us with that. So the reason, like I said, the reason I wanted to do that was to just kind of look at it all together. And then, you know, see what we had, what your thoughts were. You know, when I looked at Judy's first draft, I thought, okay, so we're still staying at 40,000 square feet. Do we want to do that? Do we want to go a little smaller to open up some possibilities?
Well, you could. Just so you know why I did what I did.
Sure.
Because there was a method to the madness. It just doesn't mean you have to like it. I just want you to know. I think that you may not realize how much you've choked development with your existing multifamily regulations. And when you change that, I think any assumptions you have today about who may want to develop, what may want to be developed, what might be assemblable, I think it's going to go right out the window. And so my thought was, if you're going to liberate these parcels from the constraints that keep them the way they are today, which you do when you change the multifamily rules, how do you then use that changed economic environment to leverage larger sites that can be better organized and therefore begin to deal with things like curb cuts and shared lateral parking, those kinds of things that sort of make the corridor a safer environment, a more pleasant environment for walking, for example, for just safety for drivers or whatever. But the curb cut issue, I think, is something that you need to look at when you have a lot of small parcels. And so one of the advantages of assembly is you begin to get a way to deal with that. So that was why I did not change the minimum lot area. That said, there's nothing wrong with having kind of a lower level sort of development opportunity for a smaller lot. But I think that you want to save your energy, if you will, for encouraging people to assemble and make larger sites that you actually can do some good mixed use with. So that was the thinking. And, I feel badly. I mentioned this last week. Somewhere in here, there's a map that I left with Stephanie that has this whole district and all the pictures on it. So all this work you did, I feel like we already did this. I'm not criticizing you. I'm just saying I feel badly because we had that map at the first meeting. And so Fiona in my office had gone out there and walked this whole district and came back and said, "Are you crazy? Don't send me out to walk in a place like that again." But I think that a lot of the conditions you describe here are really, they're resonant for me too. And I think it's really, for me, I just kind of want to get a sense of, do you want to allow or encourage some kind of what I'd call incremental evolution on these lots, or do you really want to change this district? Because if that's what you want to do, then I think you need to let the, as I say, unchoking of the multifamily dimension do its course. I think you're going to see more interest in development here, and you're going to see parcels assemble that right now, under existing conditions, would bother.
Right.
There's not enough economic incentive to do it.
Well, but what do you see as the biggest issue? Because I'm trying to think about this. If we made it lower than an acre, I mean, you could still conceivably see people aggregating parcels in order to.
You
put
could,
up a
you could. You could. I guess it's a question of, do you want that? Or do you want to actually facilitate some reorganization of the way land use happens out there? And that's a policy issue. You just need to tell me. I thought I was hearing, and I may have been wrong, that you wanted to sort of encourage that kind of assembly and better reorganization of the district. But if you want something that's more incremental, maybe gets you down the road, more assembly.
Well, tell us how that works in practice, because I'm just, again, it seems to me that the lot size, I mean, I'm looking at Greg's presentation and I'm seeing a few
Yep.
Parcels that probably couldn't be aggregated, that are probably candidates at some point for something different. I mean, I'm looking at, 40, for instance, which is only, half an acre. And that could become something. It's an interesting location. And there are other examples that Greg just pointed out. So how does it, that 40,000 number, how is that the magic number, and why
It's not
wouldn't
magic.
it be less?
It's not
Okay.
magic, it's what you have today. So recognizing that there were a lot of other things in that bylaw principles document, the lot area is just one small piece of it. I hate to say it, but that's really not what that document's about. But to answer your question, from a planning point of view, from a legal point of view, if somebody has a non-conforming lot, there are things they can do with a non-conforming lot. And maybe that's just the way that is for some of these properties, because you have this district with these varied lot areas. The other possibility is to say, fine, if somebody has a substandard lot, substandard in terms of 40,000 square feet, then maybe you build into this bylaw some kind of special permit option to allow a certain type of activity or range of activity or waivers or something from the requirements, the way you could use a special permit, to waive some of these requirements to allow development incrementally on those smaller lots. But the advantage to having as of right for a larger lot is, plus getting rid of that multifamily restriction, which I'm telling you is a noose. You do that, and you're gonna see a different economic situation in that corridor than you have right now.
Right, I mean, we've known, now it wasn't us, but long ago, that noose was designed in.
Oh, I know it
So,
was.
you know, we knew that.
Yeah, I know you
And
did. I
But
know.
now, and for years, it really wasn't an issue, because until we had sewer,
Yeah,
given the soils and
Sure.
a lot, there's nothing,
Whatever.
but now, so, I guess, but I still look at, this is such a small district
yep,
that there are still, and I mean, you're right, look, no one's can predict everything, but there are some parcels that just don't seem they're ever gonna make sense.
so
to
provide for a
to-
special permit waiver. And that's the easiest way to do it.
Is it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Special
I think we
permit
should do anything
waiver.
special permit.
well, I know,
absolutely.
but that's not what we're proposing. So, I mean, this is, again, this trade-off thing of,
Right.
you unlock the multifamily thing, you get rid of the special permit requirement, you have a better site plan review bylaw. You do a lot of things like that, and you've changed the attractiveness of an area for development. That said, if you don't want to tie the hands of those smaller properties, you can simply provide for a special permit waiver.
Is it impossible to put something there that contemplates the bigger lot and the smaller lots and still allow for some guidance about what those need to be? Instead of, when you're, the first things I see, and I walk the place, not taking pictures, but I walk the place, it's so diverse.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
It's so diverse.
Yep.
There is everything there on that area.
Yep.
There is from Shaw's to
It's
single
eclectic.
family little house.
It's eclectic. It's part of what makes it endearing, frankly.
I think we are in a trap in order to try to put something in writing that accommodates everything here.
Sure. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not sure you can do that in a way that you're not then going to end up with unintended consequences. You certainly can have a bylaw, if you want, that drops the minimum lot area and allows for whatever you want to allow there. I should point out that I intentionally did not write use regulations here. This is all about form, and that was done for a reason too.
Yeah.
But you could do that on a smaller lot basis and maybe build in some kind of, a kicker or something where you hit a certain lot area and now instead of a you know, being able to build double the size of the lot for a building, now you can go quadruple. I mean, I'm just making numbers up here, but I'm saying you could do that. You could say you reach a certain lot size, and now your opportunities for the amount of development you could do kicks upward.
You can
do
you can even incentivize the consolidation on the bylaws if you
Yeah,
want.
you could. You could do
Say
that.
if you have this size, you can't do it, but we encourage consolidation, and then you.
Yeah, we just have to make sure we do that with dimensional rules and not
Right,
use.
right. No, with some parameters, not.
You can do that.
What about floor area ratio?
In the world of form code, we actually don't like that anymore.
That's
but,
all developers talk about.
No, that's because they're forced to in towns that still
Is that
have
right?
FAR. But
Boston.
you know, it's really passé, and people are getting away from it. Now the really conversation is, how do you regulate around form? And you know, if the setbacks work and the coverage works and the height works, why do you care about FAR? You know, because the other parameters that have to be accommodated in the lot are still going to have to be accommodated. You're still going to have to think about parking. You're still going to do whatever, but regulate where you want to see. Where's the building on the lot? Things like what percentage of the frontage has to have a building.
You
That
want to know
kind of
why they
stuff.
do it though, is because the floor area ratio goes directly into financing, and that's how they sell the piece to the bank.
Right.
Or their investors.
Right, but there's an implicit FAR in every.
Is that okay? So that's been kind of contemplated in what you provided to
Well,
us.
I'm not paying attention to the FAR because
Right.
I'm trying to pay attention to where things go on the lot and what their relationships are to the buildings on the next lot. I'm thinking of it more that way. So I haven't bothered to calculate an implicit FAR. I could if you want me to.
I mean, I'm just curious.
But we don't write
kind of.
FAR zoning anymore if we can possibly avoid it.
Okay, interesting.
I know that banks do ask, you're right.
They do.
They do, I know.
Well, and investors, not just banks. I mean, any sophisticated investor, that's the language that they're using these days.
Oh, and that's true, like where you might say, well, okay, so with mixed use, it has to be X percent, residential in order for the bank, in order for it to work with the finance.
Yeah.
So that's one component, and as you mentioned, the FAR might be another component. So there's different
Without
components.
question.
Yeah, but I'm gonna encourage
Economically
you.
feasible, development, obviously, and we
to
should
put a
consider all those
percentage.
factors as we work on this.
Good work.
I agree.
Right.
But don't you worry about in your regulations, regulating the percent of commercial.
Well-
Let the project figure that out and
That
let them
makes sense.
duke that out with the bank.
We
Well,
might
it-
play to the point where, we think about where we want the town to go over the next, 20 to 30 years.
Right.
Yeah.
What matters the most with mixed use is where does the commercial sit on the lot? Not how much, but where it is. Because if it's facing the street and it's occupying the entire first floor, facing the street, that's really the issue. It's not whether it's 10%, 15%, 25%. Those are actually rules that are killing mixed use development. So think more about qualitatively, where do you want it to be in the building, and how close does the building need to be to the street or to each other, so that you get an energy level going that makes sense for that commercial first floor use.
For this to happen, it needs to be feasible from the financial point of view.
Of course,
Okay, so that will drive developers to do it.
I understand that.
So, what you are saying, putting this ratio doesn't help them in any way?
They're gonna take their regulations, they're gonna say to their engineer, what can I build here? It's the same thing, whether it's an FAR or not. It's still, what can I build here? Here are the dimensional regulations I have to live with.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't tell you how many times I see FARs that aren't even attainable, because by the time you've thrown the parking requirements in, the coverage limitations, the height rules, and, all the other junk, frankly, that gets written into these bylaws, often you can't even reach that FAR, it's an illusion. So I think we're really trying to encourage communities to get away from that and focus instead on what is the quality of development you want in this area, and write the rules accordingly. So, that's where I was coming from. But, Greg, back to this whole issue about special permit versus as of right. To me, and I've got enough experience in this field that I can tell you, when you say this to developers, at least the ones I know, their faces light up. The multifamily bedroom restriction is gone, you have a clearer set of rules that you have to meet, but in exchange, you get to do this as of right. You compare that to a special permit and all the discretion that goes with that. You are much more apt to get what you want if you have a good site plan review bylaw and the ability to do those projects as of right. And if your form rules make sense, why do you even need the special permit? For what?
I think we found the special permits work better for us because as a community, communities have different pools of developers.
Yep.
I don't care how great of a code or a form or zone we write for this. These are small mission. If you drive down this,
Yeah.
Going back looking at those photos, really reminded me how much the historical area had deteriorated. You drive by it every day, you take it for granted, but I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, so besides this fence, there's nothing on this house that's historical anymore.
Right.
And what we've been able to start changing the culture here in Easton, I think the last 5 or 10 years, we're in development, where through the special permit, which you and Jay turned us on to, I loved it, we've really been able to work with developers because they want a predictable timetable. So if we come in and say, okay, hey, make it pretty, make it do this, do that, give the town this. It's worked well, and we've been able to change the culture and started to get some nice projects. What concerns me with this district, right, it's a little bit of everything, and there's just not, up towards Target, there's some larger parcels, and there's just not lots of, even if you can, how realistically, given the diverse owners that we have in this area, how realistic can we really consolidate many of these lots, because it's still not going to be all that large, and what I don't want to do is have Easton end up just like Route 1 in Attleboro, where we have layer upon layer of every franchise in America. And where retail commercial is changing so much. We're right in the midst of it.
It certainly is.
So I get the whole walkable neighborhood. We need that. We need some diverse housing types. So I'd like to see in a couple of places here we don't even have a commercial element. We just do compact neighborhoods. We create those quarter-acre and under lots so we can truly get a small A affordable housing. So that 10 years from now, when we can get this road rebuilt and we get sidewalks in there, they can walk to some services. But to think that every property here is going to be mixed use,
Well, no.
the demand's never going to be there.
No, of course not.
Right. So
That's
I
not
don't
what
know
you're
how we
voting.
unlock. I just don't know what the solution is to get there.
So let me ask you a question, because maybe I just don't understand. What is it that you can get with a special permit that you don't think you can get as of right with a good site plan review bylaw? What do you think you can get?
Well, I'll back into that one. In Easton, and I've lived in this town I've been on this side of the table and this side of the table for 31 years, and I don't think it's unique to Easton, but a lot of the developers that we deal with on a daily basis look for, and developers aren't bad people, but they go for the lowest common denominator, the easiest path. So I haven't seen many people do great jobs in this town with by right zoning.
Well, your by right zoning isn't very good. I mean, what am I supposed to say? It's like,
Yeah, but and I shouldn't pick on just the
I can go home, but I
shouldn't just pick on, but look at the zoning that we did a couple of years ago.
You guys have gotten away with having not so great as of right zoning by relying on special permits.
Right, but Korea's Plaza, and if Ed was watching, I think he'll be okay with it. Now, and you wrote that with us, and by doing that under a special permit, you see what originally was what I was just looking at it the other day. I have a stack 4 feet high of that project, and I counted. I did 122 meetings with those people.
Are you talking about KSIP?
No.
Oh.
Well, Queet's a commercial district.
Right.
Yeah. So Korea's Plaza, which is the first mixed use, 30 apartments, 50,000 square feet commercial, yada yada, 5 buildings. But if the original, we spent 2 years on that. In the original proposals that they came in with, and again, because it's like a lot of the guys around here, they go to their engineers. Now the local engineers are engineers, but maybe they're not land planners as much, and they just go to, one time we had a proposal for the location of a sewer treatment plant was determined by the subcontractor that was supplying the subsurface tanks. So he went with his little CAD layout, he went bum, 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 tank, and they just plopped the building, and the building didn't relate to the cul-de-sac it was on, and it made no sense, right, you know? And we, as a board, you know, so we've had to do quite a bit of, I don't know, maintenance / arm bending in here when it comes to aesthetics, when things were by right. So the special permit has given us that ability. If we've been successful with it, because you know, we communicated up front, we work with them, we put in the time. I'd love to have, you know, look at the team that did the assisted care. Fantastic. Look at every time the Stonehill has a project where they use true professional teams, they come in, they blow you away, and huge projects are in and out in 2 weeks because
It's a
the
policy
level.
decision for you guys.
Right.
All I'm saying is that the only thing the special permit really gets you is the ability to say no to the use. That's the only thing the special permit gets you that a good site plan review bylaw does not. Because with site plan review, you don't regulate use. You regulate the development. So if you can accept that what you're trying to do is build a place and not regulate the use, you don't need the special permit. Because through site plan review, you can regulate design. The board has the power to impose conditions on a site plan review decision. It's up to the building inspector to enforce those conditions, but they are enforceable as zoning. So there's nothing you get except the ability to say no to a use. Or the ability to waive requirements. So that's why I go back to the statement that if you wanted to allow incremental kind of change on those smaller lots, one way to do it, not the only way, is to just build into the bylaw a fairly generous special permit waiver provision that will allow the board to waive certain requirements for someone who doesn't meet the, you know, the requirements of the bylaw. That's a possibility. The other possibility is you have a set of standards as of right for a smaller lot, and I'd be happy to do that, but I just want you to know why I didn't.
Sure. So so I just want to make sure I understood you. So building requirements as part of a subdivision approval, I mean, site plan approval.
Yeah, it's not subdivision.
No, site plan approval are enforceable as zoning.
Absolutely, it's a condition the bylaw has to give you the authority,
Right, right.
but the board can place conditions on a site plan as part of its approval.
Related to building aesthetics?
Design, yes,
Right.
design.
Okay.
I call it design.
Sure,
but-
sure.
Yeah, and we'd kind of talked about that at one of our brainstorming sessions,
did.
which I thought was a really appealing option.
Yeah, I mean,
Because I agree with Greg. I mean, the work that they did on Correas Plaza, I mean, we obviously we would like to have some ability to do that again.
I don't blame you at all. I mean, and I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that every developer will come in with the best project in the world, even if you do more, I think, specific kind of regulation on dimensions that we're suggesting here than you have in your current bylaw. I still think you're gonna get people who don't get it. So, you know, but the special permit, the beauty of it is it does give you a lot of flexibility. I mean, it does do that. I'm not gonna lie about it. You can negotiate stuff, you can waive things, you know, you can do a lot. But I'm just trying to think about this from the development point of view, which is what I thought I was hearing, that you wanted to encourage more development here, that as of right, getting rid of that multifamily provision and having clearer regulations about what they have to do, to me, is a prescription for success. But it may not be the way you want to go about this, and that's fine, because it's your town, it's not mine.
So is there a bylaw sort of meeting your description that isn't, isn't Somerville's 1,000-page?
No, it's not, oh, God.
I mean, so is there one that would actually fit our town that you could, point us to, that we can look at, that has worked, that we can?
Well, I tried in the, whether you liked it or not, what I was trying to do in the bylaw principles document was to lay out what those kind of form things are. I mean, a typical bylaw has a lot area and a set of setbacks and maybe a coverage limit and a height rule. That's typically what they have. But this goes way beyond that. This talks about, where on the lot does the building need to be, so that as redevelopment occurs, you get a fairly consistent building line where it's going to take place, because that's kind of what you want if you're trying to incentivize development, and maybe as things change, perhaps a district that's a little more coherent than it is today. And I'm not knocking the funkiness that's out there. I'm just saying if it's going to change, you want it to change in a certain direction. So this concept of kind of where on the lot is the building line, that is not in your current zoning. The amount of the frontage that has to have building is not in your current zoning. And when you don't regulate that, you run the risk of getting a building that's kind of awkward in relation to what's around it. That's how you get the big spaces between buildings that don't make sense if you're trying to create something that's more walkable. This gets at the height within the building. You know, you don't regulate that now. You have a maximum height, which is what typically towns do. And I've worked in towns where, you know, they'll say you have to have a minimum height of something in the commercial district because they don't want to have one-story buildings. And what they end up with is a building that might be 25 feet tall, but it's still one story and it looks stupid. So this gets at kind of what does that height have to be at the first floor level? And what can it be in the upper stories? Because that's how you begin to define the form of the building. Now, this is not as prescriptive as Somerville. I would never put that on any town. I think that what's going on there is, and those are friends of mine, I actually work for Somerville, but I wouldn't do that to you. But I think these kinds of rules begin to get you a communication with the developer that says, this is what we want physically in this district. And we've been kind of hands-off on use. Now, that also you may not be comfortable with, and that's fine. But I intentionally said, if you get the building you want, what do you care how it's used? Do you really care? And maybe you do, but you know, some of the most beautiful buildings in towns that people love are used today for something they were not built for. The building endures. The use changes. So do you want a building that's going to endure? That's how you end up with a Route 1 in Attleboro with buildings that don't endure. But by God, you regulate use. So these are like these big policy questions, you know, and really I think I just want to know what you're comfortable with so that, because I don't want to give you something you're unhappy with.
So you mentioned before that the cons of doing for more special permit and less definition is that you think that developers will be less, will not be as easy for them to go with projects. Is that the con?
Well, I think, you know, from a developer's point of view, the special permit always has a risk. It's the risk, first of all, of spending 2 years with you. And when your bylaw isn't clear, because now you got a special permit you can rely on, the risk is greater that somebody's going to spend 2 years with you. Because your bylaw doesn't really tell them what they want in the first place. The second problem with the special permit is its appealability. So you go through all this work with a developer, and the developers know this. I mean, they go all through this work with you. They finally get the plan the way you like it. You guys say, this is just the next best thing since sliced bread. And then it gets appealed and it gets tied up in Superior Court until I'm dead. You know, which is, that risk is reduced when you have an as-of-right site plan approach.
I have a hearing on one of those tomorrow.
Which side do you want?
The good side.
It's just, I noticed that he didn't answer the question. So,
He's a lawyer, what do you expect?
That's a lawyer answer.
That actually is happening in Foxborough right now with sort of
Yeah.
a project that had been.
so it's, like I said, I mean, these are just these big policy questions. And I thought, last time I met with you guys, they want to get something done here, right? So I'll tell you how you get it done. You get rid of the stupid multifamily rule. You know, you have clear dimensional regulations, and you remove the special permit, but you preserve it in the bylaw for situations where someone says, I can't meet this rule. I can meet all the other stuff, but I can't meet this one. So here's a trade-off. You know, I can't do this. Maybe I can't meet this setback, but I'll give you more open space over here. Or, you know, I can't make these height regulations work, but if you give me some relief, I can give you more open space over here.
I mean, I think the conundrum that we're faced is that, you know, even with the special permit project that we've had,
Yeah.
it's, you know, it takes a bit of work, and we don't have these lofty expectations. You know, we're just trying to get, you know, a project that sort of fits the area.
Right.
So how would that be accomplished by as of right would be almost, you know, it's a little more difficult to understand how that would work. based on our prior experience, even with special permit.
Yeah. I can only say that when all you say in your bylaw is, here's your minimum lot, here's your front, rear, and side setback, here's your height, and here's your coverage limit.
If we do
If that's all you say, there's a good reason why you're getting stuff you don't want. Because it's not enough guidance as to what you want to see in that zone. I'm sorry.
so if we break it down on large lot and small lots and medium lots, whatever that is, and change the dimensions for the form that you are talking about, we should be all set if each one of those say, if you don't conform, special permit.
Yeah, I just think that the only reason I have some anxiety about this is that, as you did, I spent a lot of time, although I did it in GIS, just looking at the lots, and not just the area, but the width of them. To try to think about some of these metrics, like the percentage of the lot that has to have building. And those percentages don't work when you start trying to shrink it down to a smaller lot. So,
It's not scalable. It's not scalable.
yeah, exactly. So that would be my only concern about trying to just sort of say, it just doesn't proportionally scale back. But I respect, really, I do. I don't want to sound like I don't care about it. I respect the concern you may have that you've got some smaller properties out there that, just may not assemble in any of our lifetimes. And what do you do about those?
Well, and that speaks to what Greg's list here, the places where he saw consolidation, rare, how often did it get up to an acre? They were 3/4 of an acre.
right.
They're just
Not too
barely over
often.
an acre. They, even when he saw the consolidation, it was struggling to get to an acre. So where would it work?
Well, maybe one of the work you can do is to get all these dimensions of the acreage, group it together and see what you come up with. And if it's possible to get a rule based on that.
So
I
not-
understand there are 2 or 3 that are very small, but
Yeah.
those can be outliers on your statistical analysis of this. And if you have enough that will consolidation get to that size, then maybe there is something we can do. But this is a,
The more owners you have, the less likely you get them to all agree, though, right? Does it take longer?
But if you
have
make
more
it
owners?
economically feasible, I hate to say, I worked on a project years ago with a consultant who specialized in business relocation. And he was amazing. He worked for the BRA, the Boston Redevelopment Authority. And we were out in the field one day looking at a bunch of properties in Plymouth, and he said, you can buy anybody. It's just a question of what's the number. And I've never forgotten that wisdom. I'm not a developer, but I thought, wow, I guess that probably is true. So I don't know how you answer that question. I guess I just continue to say, well, I do need to jump in with this. Pardon me, my brain's all over the place. You're looking at the assessor's cards. Where did you get your area?
Yeah, assessor's cards.
Okay, see, I'm using the GIS map. So not to drive you crazy, but just so you all know, the shape in the area in a GIS parcel does not always line up with what's on the assessor's card.
Yeah.
So we may have even had slightly different numbers we're working with. But I would let's just say there is an assumption here that even if you could group 3 or 4 parcels that might make sense for whatever reason, you don't get to an acre. I wasn't all that worried about it because in my mind, I kept thinking, this is where the special permit to waive in exchange for certain trade-offs would make sense. And that's why I wasn't worried.
but this by law exclude all the small places, period.
As an individual parcel,
Yes.
but not as an assembled site. And I maintain, my view is, when you get rid of that choke on multifamily, when you get rid of the special permit, and you make it clearer what you want in terms of just how much can be built on the lot, I think you change some of these assumptions that you may have.
So it might happen, it might not. You
It might
don't know.
not, that's correct, absolutely, I concede that. So I just need you to tell me, do you want to have kind of an option in here for
Small lots.
as of right redevelopment on a smaller lot, and I can try to work through some of those rules, or Or do you wanna have the whole thing a special permit? I mean, I just need some direction so I can get this
I
done.
think the smaller permits we should do, at the smaller lots, we should do special permit. Because, because the big elephant in the room we still haven't talked about is the number of units, and I think you had 32 and 24 with a big, needs discussion. And I think we need to now put our resident hats on. We know the
Yeah.
current, Easton is,
Yep.
most residents in Easton are tired of, because they look at that and they say, okay, yeah, more apartments, and they're tired of that. Maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong, but they just are. So, maybe I'm naive. That's part of me. I'd love to see part of this. I'd love to see small, compact neighborhood. I'd love to see 1,500 square foot homes on 5,000 square feet, just like Easton had starting. Because I don't see this isn't all going to fill up with commercial. I just don't see the need
No,
for it.
oh, sure, absolutely.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I mean, even with the, with the Queeset area, it was sort of some had mentioned that, perhaps it wasn't feasible the way we were lining it out. And sort of our plan was to, see how it works, see if that actually works, was to develop some of the properties. If it doesn't, we'll look back at it. And, so far it's not construction all over the place, but it actually is, it's moving along at a reasonable pace.
That's good.
Along with the,
Yeah, I was one of the
economy
people who had
turn,
market
right, yeah.
anxiety.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't remember, but anyway, so sometimes our approach might be a little conservative in some views, but it might actually be progressive in other people's views. Therefore, we're sort of,
Agreed.
Meeting in the middle that may find a good
Agreed.
fit for our town.
Yep.
I think that if we leave, the smaller lots up to special permit, though, we're not really sort of even setting up any parameters or ideas for what could be done.
On
I mean,
what could be done
like
on
a
smaller
single- like
lots.
a small single-family lot. If you don't do anything, you just say it's by special permit, well, somebody's gonna say like, oh, well, okay, I can build another single-family home here, or okay, maybe I can go in for a special permit and build a duplex. Like, you haven't really given them any ideas of like, oh, well, if you have a single-family lot and it's this square footage, it can be subdivided up to this amount if you do A, B, and C, if that's what you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it's very subjective to whatever board happens to be on at the time, so maybe we all have a vision, but 7 years from now it could be totally different people and they may have a different thought, and so then it's just completely subjective and also potentially always changing, which is good and bad, but I don't know. I'd probably be in favor, if we're sitting here right now, I feel like what would be the harm in suggesting possible things if it still wasn't within what, say, a smaller lot wanted to do, they still can come in for a special permit.
You could get rid of the minimum lot entirely and just talk about minimum land area per unit.
Yeah.
So if somebody had a 20,000 square foot lot and it's a single family home and you don't talk about minimum lot anymore. You say, the minimum land area per unit is 10,000 square feet. Someone can do a duplex.
That takes
You would want to,
Or multi.
you would want to have a frontage, there are certain requirements you'd want, but that might get at this issue of it's never going to be a mixed-use building. It could evolve as sort of a missing middle type of use, the small scale duplex, 3, 4, 5 type.
And see,
missing middle.
now we're starting to cross-poll, we're mixing everything. Because a perfect example, if we're going to do that, then we have to do this special permit, because we've seen by right duplexes, we see what we get. We get crappy twin houses built for $12 a square foot right next to each other. Now when we do it as special permit, which we took over 2 years ago from ZBA, we have totally revamped. We get much nicer duplexes in town.
And why is that? What are you doing, Greg?
Because you'll get it if it's pretty.
Yeah, but you could have design standards.
Yeah, but you know what? The gray matter is smooth, as Sister Carey used to say, and it's sometimes I haven't seen. We've been really successful here with special permits, on a small scale level. I understand a more sophisticated developer on a larger project wanting that sure bet. And I, you know what, when we're talking 5 acres and 40 units or 50, I get that. But when we get Mr. or Mrs. contractor who wants to come in and bang up a, you know, we have to do some heavy lifting just to make it look to be a decent looking duplex. This is Easton. This isn't Newton.
I think it's a good point, but I think that it's addressed by, you know, the fact that we can maintain some control over the design process. I actually think that speaks to a point that Deb made, which, you know, Boston is seeing now, where every one of their development projects is up to a certain level of discretion.
Yep.
And from a political standpoint, we've seen the mess that can cause.
Yep.
I mean, so 10 years from now, who knows who's gonna be on this board? And I know Greg and you've ushered in an incredible process. You put more work into this than anybody could imagine, but you're not gonna be here 50 years from now. And, you know, if we're talking about somebody either, you know, rolling up their sleeves and doing what you've done versus the developer coming in here and saying, hey, you know, I'll put up a deck in your backyard if you pass this, I think that we ought to err on the side of, let's put some standards and some controls in place to make it easier for everybody to do business here, while also maintaining the opportunity for the board to participate in the aesthetics. Because I think that's I think that that's really the main issue in maintaining the character of these neighborhoods is the look.
Yeah.
And I think you said it very well.
But let's talk reality now, okay? That process hasn't worked well. There's been huge gaping holes in the safety net that have fallen through. When it's up to certain positions, it hasn't happened, okay? We've had local historic district permits going out. We've had architectural review permits going out, multiple that fell through the holes and didn't. The bylaw that we wrote and the decisions that we wrote were not abided by.
Well,
and I kicked and screamed and I got pulled into the principal's office. Right, so I'm talking about the reality of what we have in Easton. I get it, we have this pie in the sky vision. If we create this wonderful, this fix-all bylaw, then everybody's gonna come in with the best project possible and everybody's gonna do the job. But that doesn't really happen. We've had to do special permits because that's the only way we've been able to enforce what we've talked about. It's the only way we've been able to change the culture in this town. And give me an example where it shows where it hasn't happened, other than the big ticket items, the Stonehill projects, the assisted care. We've had to do a lot of policing, and I don't see that going away. We can have the world's best bylaw. It's not going to change who the customers are.
Well, I think that is a problem, and I do respect that.
Huge problem.
But enforcement.
I know I'm not going to be here in 50 years. None of us are. But we're here now, and that's no reason to not write a bylaw that fits this board and the personnel in this building. This is all in 5-year cycles.
No, I agree.
You know?
But we should be thinking about the future, and I just
Of course,
want
we're thinking about the future, but
I want to understand where you're coming from here, Greg. Are you suggesting now that we should scrap this process and just stick with the special permit, or because this is the biggest picture question?
well,
It is, it's huge, it's
right,
absolutely.
Well, look at anybody that don't, you know, for the last.
I mean,
when
this isn't going to get
the
off.
projects that I've worked with you on,
support.
the projects that I've worked with you on in town here, we did special permit. Jay Talon, town council, who's been instrumental in all of this stuff. Oh, they've always have been pushing, and this is, I'm now on my 8th planning director or interim planning director, and the vast majority of them have always liked special permit because it gave us, the boards in town, more control, and it gave,
And that's the downside.
and right, if you do it badly. But here's the downside if you don't do it. Yeah, you can have a crappy board, you can have a terrible board. We don't. I'm very proud of the work this board's done the last 13 years I've been on it. And that could change tomorrow. But you can also have crappy applicants, you know?
Well, yeah, I'm sure you will. Oh, sure, absolutely.
And
You have crappy applicants, whether it's a special permit or as a right.
And so I don't really care how it gets done. I don't mind a little bit by right, but I was going back to Deb's original point. I'll resign. If we're going to do duplexes by right, I'm leaving now because I can't participate in how that will destroy the value of this town.
But that's just an idea. I just want to understand because I genuinely want to know. Are we talking? Because Greg, clearly this is not going to get off the ground floor without your support, whatever it is.
No, I'm just.
So are we talking about? you know, making some substantial revisions to the bylaws, or are we talking about doing things only by special permit and kind of continuing the way we are? I mean, what do you
Well, I think they're both the same. They're not mutually exclusive. I mean,
Well,
we're
they are
changing,
different.
we're, yes,
I think
that's
they're
changing the bylaw. Look, I mean, we're looking to get rid of the multifamily because the multifamily has been a dam. I mean, it was put in place. I don't know who it was, but that obviously was put in place so there wouldn't be multifamily.
It was when the town started attracting a lot of condominium.
Yeah, I think it was back when, yeah, the anti-condo things of 30 years ago.
That's what it was. It was
And-
anti-kids.
And again, it really wasn't much of an issue, again, because we didn't have sewer. So again, you know, the soils in this town and the lot side, it wasn't like we had huge, you know. But, so, I see, I guess I look, you know what, so here's what I want to get, what I want to get out of this district, and this is, you know, I want every neighborhood that we touch in Easton, okay, I want to rise above the rest, okay? We were given, Easton has why did we all move here? Why did we stay here? Why do people continue to come here? So much of it is tied to the history, to the green, to the open space, to the aesthetic. Aesthetic is good for business. And so when I made my crack earlier about Route 1, because recently I had to drive down that, and what a visual cacophony of every sign. I'm like, you like break out the navigator, because I just it was hilarious. It was sign after sign after sign, just stacked behind each other. I can't even imagine how it's zoned over there. So I want someone to drive down this district a few years from now and see some creative buildings, a vibrant streetscape. I want trees and bushes and benches and well thought out projects. But knowing that we have just a bunch of small little lots for the most part, all over the place, with all different owners and different types of owners. I think, okay, yeah, there's a few pockets where you can do something you can consolidate, or even they're large enough now. And if we have a well-written bylaw by right, sure, that's fine. We can make that work.
So, but what are you talking, from a concrete perspective, how far are you willing to go in terms of, you know, changing what we've got now?
Is your biggest concern the small stuff or the bigger stuff? This has been very interesting. I didn't mean to cut you
Well,
off.
my
but I'm almost trying
concern, my concerns are all of it. But I mean, I don't, you know, the small stuff. Okay. See, I guess I look at it. Look at this, right? So if I'm up towards, here's how I look at it. If I'm up towards Target, right, up in that neck of the woods. Now, really, what I look.
I counted. The ones under 3/4 of an acre,
Yes,
10 units.
only 10,
Okay.
So this discussion
3/4 of an
needs to
acre.
go back to what I say. Someone needs to categorize this and say, well, because you might be discussing something that applies only to a very small portion.
Well, no, but the thing is, you need to consolidate if you're going to get into the form base. You need to consolidate because otherwise, as Judy said earlier, it doesn't work.
Right.
Even you might be able to get 40,000 square feet, but given the shape of the lot, it's still not going to work with what she's trying to do.
Right.
So, and I'm just saying, okay, well, if we try to keep it and all that, you know, you're kind of constrained. You need consolidation. Maybe that'll happen. Maybe it won't. But you know, same thing on 138. Once we plant a couple seeds, and we're not going to drop. Not every unit here is not going to get 24 units on it. We don't. The town doesn't want that, you know. But there are pockets where some large scale things could be done. Clearly up by Target and maybe down the other end. You know, we could be creative around Shaw's and I would like to see a mix. I would like to see compact neighborhoods worked in here a little bit. Because wouldn't it be neat? Okay, so there's that 3/4 of an acre lot. Well, the next door there's half an acre. There's 2 small houses on there right now, and maybe one's rented out and one's seen better days because they're right on a heavily traveled road. But if they had the ability to put 4 or 5 houses in there, you know, compact neighborhood, well, that's economic development also, because that's going to that could potentially get a younger family and get them walking. You know, not every site here has to be mixed use.
Of course. Oh, absolutely.
Right.
I agree.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
No.
I just want to, so that's, you know, where we, you know, but if we put that every acre can have up to 32 units by right, Well,
That's what we'll get.
first of all, the town's gonna burn us at the stake, and then all the developers and we're gonna get 32 units and everything. But I don't think that's what we want.
So you do agree that if you provide enough density,
Oh,
you can change this
of
district?
course. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
And,
just wanna
and,
make sure.
and we want to do that. We just need to. Yeah, we're like reverse engineering, right? I mean, it would be easy if it was nice, cut and dry, but it's all these, you know. So I guess I thought, you know why special permit has worked well is because the last 3 or 4 years, Stephanie and I, what we've done when someone comes in and wants to do something, we meet with them. Before they spend a penny with their engineer, and we talk about what we've been doing in the town. We talk about the things that we discussed going. We really do talk about the master plan and all the things, all the focus groups we've done, and all the study groups, and all the things we do here. I represent everything that we've talked about at the board, and I don't mind putting that time in because we've had good results. And change takes a while, you know, but we're getting there. We're fine. You know, recently someone came up and said, "Thank you, everything you do for Easton. You've really started to change the culture of development." I thought, wow, that was a homeowner. I said,
But you can do all that with site plan review.
Yeah, I don't care how we do it. I just want it, I need it to work because early out of the gate, we've had some huge issues. And again, this is just a personnel thing, I guess, right, or people, or a system, but it hasn't worked. You know, so we need to.
See, the only thing that concerns me is, you know, I hear your frustration, and you're not the only town I've heard this from, of the enforcement problem. You know, stuff we said, it never actually happened. But that risk exists with a special permit too.
Yep.
You don't enforce, the building inspector enforces. So if there's an enforcement problem as of right, there's gonna be an enforcement problem with special permit. I'm not sure that's the issue. I think really, the concern I have about special permits, and I'm not dogmatic about this, but I think the problem is, and it exists in your zoning, you don't have to say a lot because they have to come in and get a special permit. So the more vague you can be, because it's going to be a special permit, the more likely it is that somebody's going to walk in with something that you just don't like, because the bylaw doesn't really direct them. I come from the school of planners that says your zoning should say what you want, and it should be clear about it. And if your zoning is clear and it says what you want, you're much more likely to get it than if you say, well, you could do this subject to a special permit from the planning board, or you could do this subject to a special permit from the planning board.
So
Maybe.
All right. So in the word of all right. So if we're gonna say what we want, then we gotta know what we want. So Deb, let me ask you: on 1 acre, how many units should there be on 1 acre? Nobody else answer. I want to ask that. Do you have like a thought? Have you put any thought into that? Okay.
No, but I think like.
Okay, so hold on.
That's not.
Let me.
Wait,
No,
wait.
I'm not trying to pick on.
No, I'm not done though. I mean, previously we had talked about having up to 4 units on an acre. So let's just say maybe that's.
Okay, so this has 32.
Can I just say, I don't,
This has
does
32.
does it have to be so extreme too? Like, can it be that we set up a parameter of, this is sort of, if you have this size lot, you can put this size building, you must meet all of A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, and if you're changing what you have, you're demolishing what you have, or you're renovating, adding it by whatever percentage, you must still come in to the planning board for design review.
And site plan review. Yeah, you would do it through site plan review.
Well, not just site plan review, couldn't we also build in
Design review is part of site plan review.
so
That's the mechanism.
you still
for it.
have, it's not like, oh, okay, well, look, I can fit the 3 things in, I don't even have to come see you, you have no control anymore. You still have a way to.
You can't build a single family home in the city of Newton without site plan review.
So I feel like, can't we accomplish both things? Kind of first of all, I also think like when you leave it really vague, you're assuming that everyone has imagination in terms of what they're going to propose to you. And I don't know that I think that that's always the case. And so I'm just saying, if we have some thoughts, which obviously everybody here probably does, even just by virtue of living here,
Sure.
what might what might be nice in certain areas, or forms or heights or things like that. Like, why not just start trying to kind of come up with some consensus on that, and then see like where are the cracks, where will that not work, and try to make it as so that there's some flexibility, but yet you're still giving them some sense of what you could do.
You could say, if you only have a quarter of an acre, you need to come to us to, you can divide that by the size of the lots.
Yeah, like you could do this, but you still have to come to us.
You can say the size of the lot is determine what you're going to do.
That's the
And
special
you can
permit
divide
waiver.
that on ranges.
You know, typically for very small projects, you have what's called like a minor site plan review process, so, you know, it's not a public, people don't have to go and notify abutters within 300 feet, they don't have to do that stuff, it's entirely administrative with the planning board. You know, I mean, that's just the way it's done, and so, because it's a technical review. It's an as-of-right use, so the neighborhood doesn't get to say no anyway, but you certainly want to make sure that you do a qualitative review on that project, so, I mean, you can do that.
Because we haven't even talked about, like, do we all think that? I don't know that I think that every small lot should even be consolidated potentially. So,
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't know. I think we should I think you're correct, Robert, in that, like, we probably should at least identify if we're even talking about even allowing some changed zoning or not, because obviously why are we even having this discussion otherwise? But then from there, if we are trying to, like, even just for our own, like, consensus, like, let's just say, we're gonna have everything still just be special permit, I mean, we should at least still maybe then have discussion about, well, what are we looking for potentially, so that when those people come in with whatever they come in with, maybe we've already thought about it a little bit out loud, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's sort of, when you talk about the two extremes, it doesn't really connect to the reality, whereas our special permits actually do set expectations, and they allow us flexibility to work with the developer, to sort of to meet those expectations, but also, formulate their own plan. We don't tell people exactly how the homes look, we look at them. So our existing special permits aren't necessarily just an open slate where we say yes or no. There's actually is guidance within them, and so that's one option. It's not necessarily,
You know what I think we need to do, all of us? I think we need to be realistic in terms of, we agree, and I'll say this to all the folks at home, to stimulate this district, we're gonna need to create residential units, and sure, some commercial space, but it's going to be more residential units. So what is that number? Okay, because first of all, we don't want to go through all this and just get blown out at town meeting. But you know what, if we're doing this by right, I just counted this 38 parcels that are over 40,000 square feet. So that's 38, just by the way this is written now, that's 38 parcels that by right could do up to 32 apartments. So I think if we went in and told the town of Easton that we're gonna do another 1,000 apartments in the Five Corner District, they'd string us up. And I don't want 1,000 apartments in units in that.
Can we get our list
Just-
with the numbers?
So what I'm saying is, and Drew, let me ask you, so you're familiar enough with this, and I know there's no merit, but yeah, I mean, you've been in Easton enough, you kind of know what, like, and then, what, is there a number in your, units per acre? Is there a magic number in your head that makes sense? And I know there's different parcels and they have different.
I don't think about units
don't
per
think
acre, no, but I think,
We do, so let's
well, of course you do. I do,
The
I
good
do, it's
news
just
is
not the
not
way I
going to
think
happen.
about development, but,
What's that?
but I think that,
Or, I guess,
you can set that number of what you can do by right wherever you want. I mean, I put in a number that I think makes economic sense, but you have to think about what the town can swallow. And maybe a lower number makes sense to you. I mean,
Well,
You know, Greg, another idea, we can look at this from a different perspective. You can shrink the size of the area that we're talking about.
Boundaries of the district.
It's pretty small to begin with. I
But,
mean, that's-
well, it's 38 parcels. So it's,
you could have
that are by right we're talking about.
you could have a
Shrink it down to
district,
10.
or,
Then we're not talking about the scale that would necessarily be concerning.
Or,
I'm not saying we don't do a mixed, but there's a couple of different ways to skin that cat.
Yeah, but I don't think that's the way to do it. Go ahead.
can I just, the other possibility is, if you think this is the coherent shape of the district, based on what you know about these properties, you could have a district with sub-districts.
Yeah.
You could say,
That's what I was just
we
gonna
just
say.
did this in Bedford about a year ago, where it is a district.
Last question.
But in this part of the district, certain forms made more sense than others. And so you could essentially have an all residential sub-district for these smaller lots. And you could have then the mixed-use sub-district for where you want to target them.
I think it would be more like the Queeset style, where there's maybe more focus on consolidation towards the intersection and then less down the end, because I don't think.
We could do that.
Yeah, right.
That would not be a problem, if that's what you would
If
like
we
to
wanted,
do.
I'm not sure.
But I mean, just to your point, I like about, leaving some properties out, the other possibility is
I think that's a great idea.
planning the area might make sense with sub-districts.
With that makes great sense. That's a better way of putting the thought that I had in my head.
Because this district, this area already has sub-districts when you think about it. It's the reason I was showing those pictures, because when if you start before Shaw's, it's residential.
Right.
Okay? Then right at Shaw's and across the mixes in, they've already taken down a couple, that's gonna become less. And you go right through the middle, the gauntlet of all the gas stations, I get it, right? But then it picks up residential again. And smaller that we don't necessarily need to get rid of those, but if up there off of South Street, if we could, or if, I don't think it's a bad idea if two of those smaller houses, if, if we went in and took if someone got an acre and a half and could put in 6 houses, I'd like to, I don't want to look at just apartments here, because the town's sick of apartments.
Yeah,
And
I
we need
think that's a good
diversified
point.
housing types.
That's a good point.
We need
It's
small
fine.
homes that have first floor access for people that are disabled, people that, for veterans, we need to be thinking about,
People who are close to 60?
that's why we have that's why we have,
yeah.
66
that's why we have,
are refused.
that's why we have the compact neighborhood. But then realistically, and I know people at home don't want to hear this, but we're always so hovering close to safe harbor. Well, maybe we go up where there's already a lot of apartments, and maybe we do put in 1 more or 2 more, whatever it is, so that we can, we can get over that 10% and be done with it, and continue to look at more forms of small A affordable housing that the town actually gets to control.
Yeah, naturally occurring affordable housing.
Because I don't buy that argument when people say, because I'll always say I thought 40B is a blunt tool, but people say, well, without that though, you'd never have any affordable housing. And I disagree. When you look what's happening with land costs and with building costs, you cannot build a house in this town right now for less than $800,000, and builders aren't making any money on that. Land's $350 a pop right now. But if we divide that into 4, you know what? And then you throw in that house cost on top of it, and then it starts to help.
40B is a blunt tool, but it's what's brought all these other
It is what it is,
tools
right?
into being.
Yeah, it is what it is.
40R wouldn't have happened without 40B.
No, right. No, I get you. But it's and you know what? Hey, and the gate's open. But this district is, and yeah, sub-districts really, that is how we should do it, because it's kind of broken down. When you look at this, it's kind of how it is.
Sort of naturally
And I
occurring,
don't
you're
want to
right.
see, I don't want to see 32 apartments per acre right on top of houses. I don't think I want to see 32 apartments per acre anywhere, other than maybe up here, because that's the first thing everybody's going to go for. Because you can buy 2 houses out there. For probably under $300,000, some of the small houses, right? And the financials work out great. Yeah. And if it's by right, where that's all we're going to get, because we constantly get lowest common
We
denominator.
can just, I don't think that's gonna pass, if it passes here.
It's not going to pass down, right? It's not going to
Let's
pass.
just throw that out the
No,
window.
but we have to talk about what's before us. So
Peter, you were saying clusters, commercial on the outsides and residential in the insides?
Maybe more just consolidation, whatever that form
Consolidation.
that takes.
Okay.
But you don't want to necessarily, for instance, you don't want to stop it down the other end in case
Right.
there were an opportunity.
well, I think you
for
build.
that.
Look at you. You
Okay.
build. I'll go up here. You
And then
build
you got
off.
the residential in the middle that
You
totally
build off of
works.
what's.
That's what I think.
You don't have to we don't have to reinvent. We just build off of what's there.
I know, my scrap's all
I
over.
mean,
That's right. I'll scoop by you.
At any particular lot, someone wanted to have a professional.
We have stuff everywhere, don't we?
First floor
All right.
and
So.
second floor, that would still be acceptable. That's what I'm trying to avoid, is, it's not allowing that.
Yeah, it's
It's not the whole thing. I'm like, what is this?
If you There is.
Yeah, there's another board behind.
There is a deal to be struck. There is a deal to be struck, though. Let's say if you kind of did it in this area.
All right, this is fine,
this
this is fine.
area,
So,
There are different ways that
so
you can
up in here, right?
address that, both issues.
So coming out of Mansfield, right, if we're gonna look at sub-districts, so, here's Target, here's Big Y. So if, large-scale units, up here. Because it's already there, it's quick access to the highway. It helps retain our rural character, which is one of our charges in the charter of the town. That it keeps that traffic, flowing. And then someday, love to see out here, Clover Valley Farm, right, which is a 61A, 130 acres. Wouldn't it be great to access, to do a public-private partnership, and we could access 30 acres of uplands here for whatever, and the town could get, we could give development rights to the farm, they can keep their farm, and then all the wet areas could be more conservation space.
Imagine a friendly development that would help access.
More development
so-
area, right?
And then, then you go back, you have the church here, this is, all green. So then here's our compact neighborhood that's going in at the
Yeah,
at the Foundry.
Yep.
So this is a residential area here. This, there's, right, wouldn't it be neat, I took someone that day, said, wouldn't it be neat if there's that car dealership at Pequannock, so that'd be a great place for a restaurant. The car dealership's fine, not trying to change anything, just, again, we're planners, so we think outside the box. So there's a little pocket there for something. There's gonna be a traffic light there,
That was the parcel I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, when you brought, and then it's residential. So remember, we looked at those lots that had some big area? Well, wouldn't it be neat, because, the parts of some of those houses are nice and have retained historical character. Some of them haven't, like a lot of houses through the years,
sure.
just things get peeled off and covered in vinyl or whatever. But, if there was a parcel that's an acre and a half, and, you put in some small homes, 1,200 square foot homes, right, or whatever, something
Cottage
like
development.
that. Again, young family walking down. And then, and then we get more, then there's that whole commercial area down here where it's more, and then, maybe there's some medium, like that, remember that parcel we talked about, that there's a house on an island that is, the access road to Walgreens goes there. That, there's a great, the one gentleman wanted to put a restaurant on the ground floor and maybe some apartments above. Not, came in with, 28 or 8, some big number. But, it's on an acre. Yeah. Maybe if there was, 8 or something in there. Again, we're starting to create that walkable neighborhood. Not getting too heavy. I know a lot of people are anti-apartments, but these are apartments that we would have a say in the town. And apartments aren't bad. People need to live somewhere. But I don't want us to see all apartments. I want, diversified housing. We want to have some condos. We want to have some single family, small, affordable, for the new young families and for empty nesters who want to stay in town. So anyway, I think my point is that, these sort of the sub-districts, it's already kind of there for us. We could, you don't have to reinvent it. We kind of look at what's there. And of course, there's a little bleed, a little changeover, but I think we can, we could look at that and break it out that way. And then maybe I think if we did something like that, combine that with, I'll go back this way, combine that with, a special permit in the case of those undersized lots, if we choose we want to use that tool. And then the architecture, if someone can show me a bylaw that gives us enforceable and understandable in this building, architectural review, fine. I just want it to work. I don't want to approve something and then see the building permit reflects a totally different building.
You
I'm
can
tired of that.
impose conditions on an approved site plan.
Yeah.
There's well-established case law. You can impose conditions on an approved site plan. If there's an enforcement problem, that's not the problem of the site plan bylaw,
Right.
that's a personnel problem.
Right.
The question, is there a way to incentivize retention and rehabilitation of historic houses through some sort of a density bonus? There's about a half dozen or so.
Yeah, lovely homes.
Somewhat altered,
Yeah,
but they're in the National Register District, Furnace Village. Some of them are in rough shape, some of them are still quite intact. And it would be great if we could incentivize and make it really financially advantageous to keep those, rehabilitate them, maybe through a wing off the back with some more, some more units in it or something.
well, that was a question I was gonna turn to you with, is that you know, in Lexington, part of their zoning says that if you have a home that's historically significant, which is defined in the bylaw,
Yeah.
and someone wants to tear it down, you know, ultimately, if it's not in a local historic district, you can't stop them from tearing it down. You can do demolition delay or whatever. But in Lexington, you can propose to reuse that structure, keeping it intact, but reuse it for other purposes that otherwise not be allowed in the district.
Yeah.
So some older homes have been converted to like office space, and it still looks like a historic residence.
Yeah.
So there are things that you can do. Those typically involve a special permit because you're kind of altering the rules for a specific property. But, and I think you would really need to do that for what you're talking about, just because there's a density bonus involved. Because you've now kind of changed the rules for a use. The use is still a single-family dwelling or something. So, but yes, you can do that. You could. And if that's something that you would like to have in the sort of residential sub-district, we could certainly write that in. You know, you might have a provision where, you know, somebody can do, I'm just throwing numbers out, so don't panic, you know, 8 units an acre for a compact neighborhood type development. But if there's a historic residence and that's going to be preserved as part of the project, you could go to 10 by special permit from the board. Just a thought.
We've had some good luck in town with some properties that have been special permit 2-family that have been rehabbed and really, really great.
That's great.
So we do have some precedent for that.
Yeah.
And it would be interesting if we could somehow make that more explicit, because there are some, you know, historically significant buildings.
What do you guys think about that? I mean, are you open to like a density bonus or something to encourage preservation?
I'm a member of the historical commission, so I'd love to see some of those.
Is there any board you're not on in this?
I know.
Conservation.
I'm not even gonna say anything on that one.
So what if I, you know, with this discussion in hand, you know, take a stab at drafting? When do you have to have, let me back up in the dates. I know Stephanie gave all this. When do you have to have a bylaw that is ready to go in terms of a public hearing prior to town meeting?
She said 2 weeks.
Okay.
Let's see.
Yeah, she said draft in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm trying to open the, she gave me these dates. She gave me these dates. You'd think I'd open this up again.
Distribute to the board on the 24th.
Final review of board is necessary. Looks like final, our public hearing has to be by 3/16.
Got it. Yeah, and I've actually got that date in my,
Right. So 316 has 3 meetings between now and then.
so she has me in this chart getting this draft to you by the 27th. Is that gonna work for you?
If it works for you, I was actually thinking the 24th, which is a Thursday, so that we could get it to the board by Friday.
Yeah, it's good to be able to reach them.
And then have it over the weekend.
Let me edit this accordingly. Because I already loaded all these dates in my calendar, which is fine. I'm happy to make changes. I'm glad we're having this discussion, but, so you're saying deliver that by 1/24?
If possible, give you guys time. Weekends when you turn into planning board members, right?
Yes, correct.
Sometimes Monday mornings.
So you guys are meeting on the 27th, and that's when you'd be taking it up? Is that the plan? Okay.
28th.
28th, all right, and then, oh, I see, right, if I were reading this thing, I'd be, okay. I mean, that's doable, yes, that's doable.
Cool.
And as a clarification, I think I heard this, but I want to make sure that I did. I'm hearing basically either end of the proposed district would be anchored by a higher density mixed use component, which is where you would get your subsidized housing inventory units to make sure that the town keeps pace with its 40B goals so that we don't find ourselves behind the 8 ball and lose control. That's
I think more the western end. I don't know on either end. I think up towards.
The aggregate,
towards Target.
there's also aggregate potential down here, but that wouldn't on the eastern end, but
Well,
it
I'm
wouldn't
thinking Shaw's
necessarily
ever
be
gets
seen
big
in
enough.
Safe Harbor.
Right. No, I mean, I think you look at the scale of the buildings, you'd want, you know, especially if we're gonna start talking units with subset, they're gonna be larger buildings. I think it makes more sense to have those up towards Highlands Plaza. That neck of the woods.
Would there be interest in the area over towards Shaw's?
No, thanks.
They're not planning to do anything, obviously,
Yeah.
but in the full.
No, I think they're just the scale of things, and we want smaller, you know, I mean,
Is that-
someday on Shaw's footprint, maybe.
I mean, if we allow it there, it's just gonna, yeah, something will,
So help me out then, I wanna make sure I'm getting this.
so that's,
Are we thinking where, is it TJ Maxx, is that what's over there?
Yeah.
Okay. That's where we have big, if you
Yeah.
will.
The sort of target end.
Yeah, thanks, the more residential subdivision extends eastward from there.
Correct.
When you get over to Shaw's,
Yeah.
are we doing a quasi-big? In other words, are we talking about 3 sub-districts?
Yeah, I think we're probably talking 3 sub-districts.
Medium.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, because there's just not that much by Shaw. It's not, but there is. I mean, across the street, there. You
Yeah,
know.
I get it.
we're not requiring any commercial, is this like, I mean, I know it's not gonna work out that way, because the whole idea is that there will be more restaurants, et cetera, and services built here. But, I mean, are we writing this as if it could just become all residential?
No, I didn't think so. No, I
No.
think we're gonna require
No.
commercial, but what we
Right.
were not planning to do was write in a minimum
No, right.
percentage.
Okay.
Right.
But
not
more
for
where
every-
it is.
But not for every development either, though, so that's.
No, but like in the middle, like I could see in the more
Yeah.
residential areas,
Mhm.
there's, maybe we can, there could be a, compact neighborhood component that doesn't have commercial.
So
Because we
maybe,
don't want to
Right,
introduce
right,
that.
that's
in
what
there.
I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Right.
maybe the 5 corners would be the mixed-use focused, area, is that?
Yeah, I think that's safe to say, sure.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're on that track.
Yeah, because when you get up towards the Highlands Plaza, there's already a plethora
I was
of
wondering about
vacant
that, Bob.
commercial space.
Well, I just
Because you
feel
had
like
that,
if
you had
we're-
that corner of Pequannock and Foundry, you might lose that little neighborhood commercial spot.
Yeah, that would, yes.
Is that what you meant?
Oh.
I mean,
I don't
the
think
way
it-
you
yeah,
said that, you
But
would
don't
lose
forget,
that.
well, no, I mean, that building's, first of all, is protected by the demo delay bylaw. And I know that, that,
You know what I'm talking about, Judy?
I think so. I'm looking at the Google Earth right now and
because that's how big is that?
It's like, it's on his thing,
Not
it's,
very big, right?
on your thing, it's a 40, right?
I can't read that.
0.58.
Point, yeah, I mean, it's not a huge.
Used to want to put a restaurant there like a long time ago, wasn't there some sort of proposal to?
What's that?
I just remember, I don't know, I think it was just some.
But I mean, I don't really see that as a candidate for replacement because it's on such a small lot. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, can I ask you another question? In that residential sub-district, what do you think about allowing the option for, I guess what I call some light commercial use, like professional offices?
Yeah, that's what I kind of expected. I didn't want to limit it.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of leave it open like the whole
You
area
know,
open.
no
so that-
retail,
There's
but,
no reason why not.
Yeah,
Right.
no, absolutely. I mean, because you could see a whole working at home component.
that's what I'm thinking.
Huh?
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
You do Doug's up and down idea.
You know, mixed use in that context could be a home office
Yeah,
and a unit upstairs.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I mean, that's how I grew up. but-
Yeah, a studio.
Literally, I did.
I mean, wouldn't think back like with this next generation. Think about all those kids in Somerville. Well, they're gonna stay in Somerville forever. But they love those maker
They can't
spaces,
afford
right?
to.
They love maker spaces.
They can't afford to stay there.
But I mean, everything's changing. Think about it. We're all, we're getting old. We're moving on, and we look at mixed use as right. There's a Domino's and 2 apartments above it, but that is changing. Our kids' buying habits are changing, right? And retail's changing because everything comes in that little delivery van now. But that doesn't eliminate restaurants. And it doesn't eliminate where you work. And I mean, I still say if some of these vacant or less than full strip malls we have in this vicinity, if someone was smart, they would put in a little incubator space.
It doesn't eliminate restaurants, but you know, I was absolutely chagrined about 2 months ago when I realized there was some commotion out in the main entrance to my office. And I heard a couple of the people who work with me talking to someone who clearly didn't belong in my office. And they had ordered a whole meal, like, Instacart bringing lunch. I said, what are you people doing? And they gave me this look like, well, we ordered lunch. So now you can like have like real whole meals delivered to you. It's not just.
That's right.
I'm like, what is going on? People don't
DoorDash.
cook anymore.
Yeah.
What's up, Amos?
People your age don't cook. It's absolutely phenomenal.
A lot of people don't
You guys-
travel. Yeah, the people don't travel.
Singled out. I cook for my family.
You do? Oh,
If
I
my
just.
wife is watching it, no, vouch for that.
There are a lot of people working from home too.
Yeah. Oh, it's huge.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, because of the advance in technology and communications, a lot of people don't need the office to be in Boston or to be on a big
That's
city.
right.
So I think opening that to put their offices in town on the first floor and leave on the second floor is probably something that will be attractive to
Yeah.
many people.
And look in the cities now. Look at these people that our kids' generation. They love, even though maybe they're self-employed or just, but they go to these workspaces. Well, that's not. I don't think that's a fad. I think that's going to continue, and eventually it'll come in some form out here. For what you said, like I'm self-employed. But yeah, sometimes I'm like, wow, sometimes I need to go see people sometimes because it's
Yeah.
just me and my dog. You know, like I'm gonna lose my mind. Now, normally I go for a ski trip, but sometimes I should actually work. So if there was a community
Well,
space.
if you can walk out and
Yeah.
people are there, then you are creating that sense of
Right.
community.
Yeah.
The Panera in Lexington Center, there's a whole room there that's devoted to home-based businesses being able to just come in and meet with clients or, I mean, it's just kind of understood. That room is, I mean, you can go in there and sit if you're not a home-based business, but they were smart. I mean, Lexington's full of people who work at home.
Yeah.
And
Dunkin'
so,
Donuts in Brockton has one, they have a little meeting room, so.
do they really? Yeah. People, you go
It's all
crazy.
changing. No, you're right. And it's foreign. I delivered a piece I made recently to a client in Brookline, and it was in an old bank, and it was I forget, it was something incubator. But you had all different.
Yeah.
There was a lot of tech
Yeah.
there, and then there were these common rooms downstairs, and all these people we just go down and we eat whenever, but they love it. And
Yeah,
it's,
they do. Yeah, it's really nice.
I think in some form that'll get out here eventually.
So just anecdotally, my daughter came to visit from Philadelphia. She's a professor in the University of Pennsylvania. And she said, you don't have anything in this town that I can go and
Yeah.
sit down and have a place with Wi-Fi, besides a few places. We need to kind of develop that
Yeah.
type of,
You're so
of places.
Yeah.
And we don't have
Yeah.
it.
Before, can I just ask, I think, it sounds like you're getting toward the end of this, but before we move to the next village business district, what did you guys think of minimum lot size versus minimum land area per unit? That sounded, I got a little bit of a creative, interest from you guys on that one. Did you want her to tackle anything with this? There was a 40,000 square feet, and then there was, let's do minimum land acre per unit. How did you feel about those? You remember what I'm talking about?
I think I'm basically all right with the lot size, so long as we come to some agreement on how many units are permitted in these different areas. And then the smaller ones would be special permit. I'm okay with that. What does everybody else?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I mean, we can always change. It's easy to change a number as we go through this.
Well, you may also see, as I see, you may already have some here, I'm not sure, but when you regulate on the basis of land area per unit, it's very easy then to just not have lots. You have a detached condo, where I see that a lot, where it's basically single-family dwellings, but they're a condo.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful one in Medfield, so,
Yeah,
Yeah.
right outside the center, right?
yes,
On
right,
27.
yeah, that
Isn't
is a
fantastic?
condo.
It's like townhouses.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, great.
wicked expensive.
Great project. Love
Isn't it
Aesthetics
beautiful?
are fantastic
Yeah.
out there.
I mean, it may be a harder sell possibly to the residents to go to a land per unit, just because it's something that's a little bit less familiar. And so I don't know if it's a safer bet to
Yeah,
stick with.
It's a good question, it's a good point. I mean, I don't know either, it's up to you guys.
Yeah,
but-
that's a valid point, right? And you have to think about passing this stuff too, and
Right.
keeping it. We have 40,000.
That's a big deal, yes.
Yeah, and that might keep it in the planning the planning sphere more than, right, breaking it down X per unit, where people always think immediately worst case scenario.
Yeah, we might not be ready for the land area. But-
No, and it might, well, and it is a way to, we still need to put a governor on this to a degree. I mean, we don't wanna build this thing out overnight.
And then the minimum lot size would change by district, by sub-district?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so in the, the residential sub-district, I'm just, again, making up numbers here, it might be a half acre or something per.
So the decision is to have both?
I'm hearing minimum lot.
Yeah, sub-districts, which I think makes sense because we have, it's diverse to begin with, and I think,
Lot size.
but it's still sort of compartmentalized, so I think it works,
You with that, Chris and Peter, you didn't speak, but I think, where are you on that too?
With lot size.
Yeah, cool.
I mean, not to complicate things, but you could have a minimum lot size and say,
I thought about that too. You do like in like the commercial section, try it there, or something like that, but.
well, but even in the residential, you could say minimum lot is 20,000 square feet, and, among the land uses that are permitted in the district is a quadruplex, so.
And that might just be as confusing to people as.
I know, but in effect now, what you've got is minimum land area per unit. So,
Yeah, you can, write it that way.
yeah. So is that what you want as a minimum lot area in the residential sub-district?
yeah.
But a lot is not necessarily limited to a single-family dwelling. A lot
Right.
could be a duplex.
Sure.
I mean, we can just put a
Would it be a
minimum.
3?
If we wanted to have a minimum coverage, we can just put minimum coverage in as a separate, and it would make sense, say, well, we wanna fill in this acre lot, by X percent, so it wouldn't actually.
A minimum open space ratio is a nicer way to address this than minimum coverage, because then you can talk about
No, it sounds better.
where the open space is, and it becomes really an amenity to
And
the
it's not-
project.
Right, so it's not a parking lot that's already.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That leads me to my other thought, which is our preliminary, game plan right now is for you to come up with some language. And then do we then review that and then, weave in, like setbacks and frontage and.
I was gonna
heights?
write all that.
You were gonna
Yeah,
incorporate
yeah,
that,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
all right.
Yeah, right, we can change it, but. I think,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And we're out of transition zones. We're sub-districts instead.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's fine. I like that, works. Okay, so you want something from me by the 24th, that I can do.
What about, how many units per,
Yeah.
area unit? How's a unit per land area?
Well, I think, I think, we made some good progress,
Yeah,
things,
right.
let's see what Judy comes up with, we'll all be, we'll all still be digesting and working on this, I know, around the clock for the next 2 or 3 weeks,
Yeah,
and then we'll,
okay.
we'll,
We got a few minutes for village, business district. It's your favorite topic, Judy. It's
Yeah.
multifamily.
I thought the only change we were making there, correct me if I'm wrong, was just dealing with the multifamily restriction that exists now.
Yeah.
Just getting rid of that.
yeah, we just gotta figure out how we're gonna do it. We just have to figure out the,
So we're gonna
Just
take
get
that
rid
out
of
the
it.
bylaw and then somehow put that. some kind of
Just
control on it?
exempt that district from the restriction.
okay, but
Why wouldn't you?
what about, what do you, we have to determine what we would allow? No, like number of units, right?
But we like to limit the multifamily, so you have to think of.
Well, let's just do, that we have to do, let's do it by special permit, it's a very important area. It's not mostly because it's all local historic district.
Is it multifamily?
I forget, I don't have your bylaw open right now. What's the minimum lot area in the
40,
village?
still 40. Everything's 40 in town.
Crazy people.
It wasn't us, it wasn't us.
Jeez.
But it's interesting.
You're not trying to spur massive change in that district. You're just trying to create the possibility of upper story units, aren't I?
Basically, yeah.
I mean, isn't that what overlays do though? I mean, that's how, there's
No,
always
20
underlying zoning on any.
Minimum lot size in the village district is 2,000.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's the, right now.
It's
Yeah.
2,000 in my copy.
How else
That's
did you get,
38,000
yeah.
square feet.
Oh, that's right, village business,
Yeah, I was
but
gonna
it's 2,000?
yeah, with no setbacks. 2000, no setback, special permit.
I mean, I'm looking at a printed copy. Could it be old?
2000. Yeah, you're right. I forgot we created that. Boy, we're so efficient.
Yeah, see, it's form-based.
But we still have the multifamily thing. Yeah.
Form-based with a special permit.
And then multifamily are not allowed in the village business district according to the use
Right.
table.
Right,
0.
right, so that's a given, that has to be.
And then if they were, they'd be subject to the more onerous bylaw.
So tell me though, because I want to make sure I understand this. Is the intent to allow freestanding multifamily or upper story in village business? What is the intent?
I would say upper story by right or by special permit, and freestanding by really stringent special permit. Because I think there's a couple opportunities to do some creative things there, but
What are we trying to
Given-
accommodate here, I guess, is that?
we're trying to create the same thing. We're trying to create more of a walkable, more residences, within reason down there. So think of, there's been a few proposals floated out through the years, probably a little too aggressive, but probably talking about those same properties and like when you think about it, 100. I did a little research. 101 Main Street, where Bill's Pizza is, 7 apartments. 100 Main Street has 2 apartments. 106 Main Street has 2 apartments. 122 Main Street, the Farmer's Daughter, has 6 apartments. 134 Main Street has 2. 1 Mechanic Street has 2 apartments. 5 Sullivan Ave has 3 apartments. And I know, I don't know, but there's the one that I think Mr. Pyrie still owns that has the barber shop in it. There's a few up in there.
And then there are a couple vacant areas.
Yeah, so what do we think? Think of proposals that we've seen or heard about in town. We're looking at Oxford Cleaners, right, in that parcel to the left of it. And, and then there's where Mr. Howe had 114 Main Street, which did we approve something? It's been so long, I can't remember. With a hole in the ground.
That's the hole.
Did we approve something?
Yes. Yes.
So much has happened since then. So, all right, so there's, but is that still
I'm sure it's-
valid? Is it still valid? What was it, special? It must have been a special permit, right?
Well, I don't know if there's a termination date on it.
I don't know, I think they expire after a certain period of time.
Special permits expire after a while, don't they, Judy?
Special permits?
3 years, 4 years?
3.
Like
3.
3 years, yeah, so that's.
Unless reasonable economic use thereof has not occurred.
Well, the commercial residential is consistent throughout.
Right.
Just from what you said, there's even, I think they still left the sign up next to the old school. There used to be an optometrist there. I think the signpost is still there. The first floor had an optometrist.
Right. No, you're right, it's, think of 201 Main, the variance they got, that's business on the first floor.
In that case, I'd say, I think it makes more sense since it's always mostly, there are some maybe single families, a couple of apartments there, but for the most part, it has been the business, the apartments on top, right? I mean, I don't.
That's just the way it was years ago.
Right.
Your store was downstairs.
I know,
That's all those, I can tell you all those, what they used to be, who lived there.
I'm 43.
Yeah.
So how does one change the zoning language to allow upper floor apartments?
We would make sure that the mixed-use provisions in the table, the table of uses, which I just need to go back to and look at.
Yeah,
And see how that wording.
This is much easier, this one.
Yeah, I think it would be.
Because you want to keep the ground floor as commercial, because one
Yeah,
of the reasons the town
that's right.
invests in sewer is to facilitate.
That's what I
commercial
thought,
development.
but I just wanted to make sure, I wasn't
that-
sure where your heads
Is
were
that
on
when we do units per square foot? Per acre? How do we do it down there?
I bet it all works out because the properties you're talking about, 276,
Right.
there's a big difference.
Sure.
Those were larger lots.
Well, that'll just be basically by the setbacks and the height.
So what's
You
a-
have
what's a-
have a restriction right
A
there,
Boston
yeah.
apartment is like 800 square feet.
Last year, the average apartment in Massachusetts was 674 square feet.
Yeah, well, that's because a lot of developers are getting clubbed not to make 3-bedroom units too, but that's another whole
Yeah.
story.
Imagine
You know,
some-
I mean, why don't you just say an average of 1 unit per 2,000 square feet up to 8 units a building, and over that's a special permit. So in other words, you give them something that they could do as a right. And you give them a density standard, but if they wanna do more, and they could do more, but that doesn't work, they can come to you for a special permit.
But actually, if our lot is 2,000 square feet, so I'm assuming there's a few buildings on 2,000 square foot lots. 'Cause
There
it's
probably
cable
are,
plant,
but,
right?
yeah, there probably are. but-
And if there's, most of those out there are 2.5 stories, right? So ground floor is commercial. So should it be 2 per 2,000? Or how did you, or by special, start
I was
with
just
that ground
saying, you
floor?
know, give them a land area per unit and a total number of units over which they have to then come for a special permit.
Special, okay, yeah.
That way you
That's
get
good.
some-
Yeah, I like special permit anyway, so yeah, that's why you keep it at 1.
I know you love that special.
I do. Well, especially, but down there, it's so important. 'Cause
Well, I'm
we're-
trying to give them something as of right, that's
Yeah,
all I'm trying to
yeah,
say.
yeah. So, yeah, we'll do that. That's good. I like that.
All right. I mean, I'll look at the lots. I need to get into GIS and look at this district again. I'm much more attuned to that than I am
Yeah,
this.
there's a lot more.
I can go back to it and
And it can
see.
be
and
written so that it's, for upper floor residential.
It's strictly for upper floor, right? You're not talking about
Right.
freestanding multifamily in that zone,
Okay, so you
it's
have
just
that,
upper
then you have to
story.
fix the table of uses.
Have to fix the table of uses, it'd be an amendment to the
Yeah.
table of uses, and amendment to the dimensional rules,
Amend the table of uses and amend
the
the
dimensional rules.
dimensional
yeah.
rules.
And then this completely bypasses the other apartments? Oh, those
We just
multifamily,
exempt it.
yeah,
We
yeah,
just
yeah,
exempt
Yeah,
it.
it's exempt
yeah,
from it.
yeah,
That's-
okay.
We just say it's exempt.
All right.
It was like peeling the
65
skin off the
stories.
onion, do section by section.
Yeah.
So could we do the same for, for the Five Corners?
That's what we're gonna do.
Because you're talking multifamily
We're
there.
exempting that area from that requirement,
You're right.
that area per bedroom.
Yeah,
That's
it's just easier for
crazy.
now, that way we don't have to change
That's
the
just
whole.
crazy.
Because they're running out of
Sorry.
space.
It makes no sense at all, unless you're trying to stop something. In which case, you might as well just take the use out of your zoning.
Yeah, I think we'll get there eventually, if we could just get a planner to stay here long enough.
Well, if you think about how multifamily.
Every 2 years, it's like,
You
this
used
is
to just
tough.
drive through them and there'll be these square apartment buildings, just like in random places, right? I mean, that's.
Absolutely.
That's probably what they
Love
are.
that, yes.
I'm sure there's some of my relatives that built them, but.
Yeah, it's good. You guys all set? Do you need anything else from me tonight?
Pizza would be nice.
Pizza would be nice.
Realize I didn't eat.
We're gonna, the boundary, the actual boundary, area, did you wanna tweak the sides or just deal with that later?
Why don't, because we'll just, at our next meeting, we'll go in more depth of the thing that I showed everybody, which I pretty much, all I did is I pulled out the 2 condo developments because it didn't make any sense. and
Well, why don't I just go into the GIS
took out all the
map,
open space.
take what you've done, select those parcels, send you a PDF and say, this is what you talked about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
this, okay.
It's fine, I can do
Will
that.
it be as colorful as mine?
I can make it as colorful as you want.
I had to go
Well,
red
and-
because
and
there was so many
and
darn.
sub-district.
Yeah, that one over there is, right there. It's almost too bright for me.
Greg, is the, or we were just talking about the village business district and.
3 sub-districts.
GIS.
Like what we talked about,
You
the
use
couple of
GIS.
units or whatever.
Sub, GIS sub.
Yeah.
And I know Judy just said like, in the village business district, if it was above a certain number of units, then it would have to.
Be a special permit.
permit.
You're basically giving them something they could do.
So anything where like, yes, there was lot consolidation, or even if it met the required, would still have to come before us for special permit, right? Cause I do worry a little bit about like massing in the village business district.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
I don't blame you. I mean,
think one per 2,000, that's 1 per lot, so, okay, so they mostly already have more than that.
Yeah,
So after that, special permit, so.
Yeah, so it'd be
And then there's a max. anyway.
2 per thousand.
Yeah,
And the district protects from.
No, it was 1 per thousand.
Consolidation.
One
well, that's
per.
what I'm worried about, like, and like,
1 per 1,000.
are any of those
No, 1 per
houses?
2,000.
because there are some like, say, like a
Change it.
5,000
No, I
square foot lot, right?
No, we're staying with Judy's 1 per 2,000.
Okay.
And don't we have that same issue down there where even though they're historic, they're not really protected? So like,
No, local historic is protected. Local
Are you
historic
talking
has
about
teeth.
down in the,
village
Furnace
business
Village?
district, yeah,
The Village Business District is the local historic district.
okay.
Furnace Village,
Most of it, most of it,
It's
yeah.
local historic district.
the
Yeah,
village,
it is.
National.
the Village Business District.
Don't worry about the national,
If
they're
I
on
owned-
this discussion.
No, the Northeastern Village.
Yeah, but I thought you were talking Five Corners.
No, I'm talking
I'm
about
sorry,
the
village
village
business
business
district.
district, sorry, yeah,
Northeastern Village,
yeah.
the Village Business District is a local historic district, so there are protections in place.
And that goes as far as our designated village business district. Like all the,
I think they overlap, I'm not sure.
Yeah, they're not exact, but I believe everything in the village business district
Look
is
at
in
the,
the local store.
is it on there?
I'm pretty sure. But
I
the,
just
like,
think,
the local's bigger.
trying to, yes, not get in a situation where there's.
No, yeah, no,
multiple-
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, let's, so we don't drag this out, we'll look all that.
Yeah, yeah,
We're
we
sensitive,
obviously
so,
just
but
sensitive.
we're on the same page, we're on the same
And
page.
what I was getting at with, the furnace village is that there are some historically
Yes.
significant buildings that.
Which I liked that.
Yes, you
that
wanna
we
make sure you
talked
don't
about, yeah.
incentivize the demolition, you wanna
Definitely like
incentivize the
that.
preservation.
Yeah, there's that nice 3 or 4.
And I was thinking in a village business district, if there are properties that weren't necessarily in the historic district, that would be another thing that would be nice to add to those properties.
Oh, I
But
see,
I don't, it
yes.
sounds like they're probably already protected.
How many,
I don't know.
how many properties in the village business zoning district are in a historic district?
That is what Andrea is
Sorry.
counting and trying to figure out.
I
So
see.
I'd say
here's-
most of them.
That's the
Yeah,
National
most of them.
Historic,
No, but the, what the local, because
and
that's
then,
something that matters.
and then the local is on a diagonal to the right. This, is that, does that look, does that make sense? Look, there it is, Ames.
Pardon me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, see, I don't have a boundary file for your historic districts.
I can send you this.
Could you? Yeah,
Yes.
because I don't have a GIS file for your historic districts. I have the zoning map.
Yeah, I can send you this, I can send you both of these as
That would be
PDFs.
great. That would be great. Thank you.
Village business is a little bit bigger.
Okay.
It gets a couple of properties on Center Street. So it does actually get to,
Two PDFs.
19th century houses on Center
Say
Street.
stories, it doesn't say
Those
you.
are not in the district, right?
They are not in the Ames local historic
Right.
district.
Probably have to amend it.
Business district. And it also gets a couple of, houses down William Street,
Okay.
so,
All right, thanks.
yeah.
So, you guys can continue that conversation somewhere else.
Somewhere else?
We've hit the 2-hour mark, so we're good, right? So, thank you for
Thank you.
coming up. And thank you for everybody coming in. I think this is what was needed. It was
Yeah,
good.
It was
And,
fun. Thank you so much for your
I
patience.
think, no, it's good. It's all, you know what, sometimes, you know, you just gotta, it's like the old days, you just gotta get in a room and,
Yeah, it's true.
you know, hash it out and work it out. And
Can't
so,
do all this by
and this is
email
great. This is
and-
the first time really we've all been together, so it's good start to the new year. I appreciate everybody coming in.
Thank you.
For folks at home, I appreciate you watching, and, folks who support us at town meeting. And Wayne, oh, who wants to bring us up? No, different Wayne, this guy. All those in favor? Motion passes. Thank you, ECAT, thank you, Easton. I already signed, I can go get a pizza. We're good.
One is the river man. This has to do with waiver.
We have to amend, yes, we have to amend.
This is the history and this is the.
Well, no. Deal with